Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be discussing temperature and how to record and figure out the temperature of something. Now, temperature in itself is a pretty easy thing to grasp. It is how hot or how cold something is. And we have special equipment that scientists use in order to figure out the uh, temperature of whatever we want to take. And this tool is a thermometer. Now, what's super cool about a thermometer is there are two kind of what we call degrees. There's this, you see this little C and this little F. These represent Celsius and Fahrenheit. And if I zoom in, you'll see there's this little kind of like zero right above it, like a small zero. This represents the degrees sign. So when we talk about um, temperature, we're talking about it in degrees Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit. Now you might be asking, why do we have two different kind of degrees of measuring temperature? And depending on where you're at in the world, you might use a different scale. Just like some people, when we're measuring weight, might use pounds or they might use kilograms or grams. So just like how we measure weight and mass with different kind of different units, we will also measure thermometers in Celsius and Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit a lot of times is used in the United States of America and some of North America, and Celsius a lot of times is used in Europe and different parts of the world as well. So, how do we read this thermometer? Well, you see that there is this red line down the middle. And wherever this red line goes up to is the degrees that we're at. So you see how this red line goes all the way up to about right here. And so what we do is when we're reading a thermometer, we look at where the red line stops, and then we look at both sides of the thermometer. Now, the left side is our degrees Fahrenheit, and our right side is the degrees Celsius. So you see that there are different numbers on the left and the right. That's just kind of where our different units of measurement when it comes to temperature. Now, we're going to measure the temperature of three different kind of objects. One is the classroom that I'm currently sitting in. The second is a tub of ice water, and you can kind of see that there are still a little bit of ice cubes left in there. And the third will be if I take my thermometer, and here's the indicator right there, and I hold it for 30 seconds in my hands. So as I hold it in my hand, the temperature might change as well. So before we begin our investigation, the first thing I want to make sure is that you and your teacher make sure that you have recorded your or drew your graph in your science notebook, and we will make sure that that is ready to go. So, teachers, if you still need to give your students some time to draw the graph, please pause the video and do so. If you are ready to continue on, then we will go into our investigation. Now, let's first look at our classroom, right? If I zoom in, we're going to look at the right-hand side. I know a lot of times we may use degrees Celsius, but we're going to look at this degrees Fahrenheit. And one thing that's really tricky when it comes to looking at temperature is to first look at our little tick marks. our tick marks tell us how much degrees we're going up. So do you see how we go from 40 to 60? Or we even go from 0 to 20 right here? That means each of these big black tick marks is 20 degrees. So I want you guys to think, what would this smaller black tick mark be in between the 0 and the 20? I want you to pause the video and discuss. Okay, if you were thinking 10, then you are right. In between, halfway in between 0 and 20 is 10. Now, if we look, we know from this tick mark to this little black tick mark is 10. But we have these little tick marks in between the 0 and our middle tick mark 10. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 little tick marks before we get to our 10. And those little tick marks represent 2 degrees. So 2, 4. So if we go 2, 4, 6, 8, and then 10. So each of these small tick marks is 2 degrees. Each of these big tick marks is 20 degrees. Each of these small black tick marks is 10 degrees. So let's go back to where we were with our degrees Fahrenheit at room temperature. Now, we see here is 60 degrees. So we go 60, and it goes all the way up to our second tick mark right here. So we go 60, 62 degrees. So the temperature in the classroom right now is 62 degrees. So teachers and students, pause the video and record that in your spiral or notebook. Are we ready to move on, my friends? So what we're going to do now is we're going to do our bucket of ice water. So I'm going to put my thermometer in our bucket of ice water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually let this sit here for a little bit. And as we're letting this sit here, we're going to go on to our third one, which is our hands clasped for about 30 seconds. So we're going to give this a little bit of time to kind of soak in that water. And I'm going to grab my thermometer. And here's where our thermometer is kind of taking that all of the kind of air around us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this for about 30 seconds. We saw that it was 62 degrees. So we're going to put my hand over it, and we're going to count for 30 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So let us look and see what happened. Now we knew beforehand that it was at 62 degrees room temperature, but look where it is now. Look where that red line ends. It's no longer at 62, but 62, 64, 66, 68. So our hands clasped for about 30 seconds and our thermometer increased the temperature 6 degrees from 62 to almost 68, getting close to 70. Now, I want you to think, my friends, what do you think would happen if I continue to clasp or hold onto the thermometer for another 30 seconds. So I want you to pause the video, think, and discuss. What do you think would happen if I kept on clasping the thermometer for another 30 seconds? Okay, my friends. Well, I don't know the answer that you said, but we can already see if I clasped it for another 10 seconds while you were thinking, it already went up to 10 degrees or up to 70 degrees. So after a while, what would happen if I hold this long enough, whatever the temperature of my body is, that's what the temperature of our thermometer is, because my hands are kind of releasing some body temperature, heat from my body. And so, whatever my temperature of my body is, that's around the temperature, if I hold it long enough, that it would become. So, let's move on to our last thermometer, which is the one that's been sitting in ice water. We see the ice is beginning to melt, but we're going to take it out and we're going to see where it is. Woo! That began to drop quite a lot. So here we go 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 30, in between 30, almost 32, around 32 to 30. So one thing that we can see is that as we put it into ice, it begins to get colder and colder. And it will go to around the freezing temperature of water. And if you guys know the freezing temperature of water, we're almost there. We're around that freezing temperature of where ice turns into, when water turns into ice. So in summary, my friends, thermometers are a way to measure the temperature of anything that we want. There are two ways to measure using a thermometer. There is degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. So just like we use different ways to measure our weight, like pounds and grams, there are multiple ways to measure our temperature. Make sure when you're looking at the thermometer that you see the scale. Sometimes the tick marks may represent 2 degrees, like it did here, the little ones. But other times, other thermometers, those little tick marks might represent 1 degrees or 5 degrees. So make sure you always take time to look at your little tick marks to see how much those are going up by, how much those are worth. So my friends, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.